The pregnant woman in house number 9. In a quiet barangay in Capiz, there is a small house at the end of a narrow dirt road, known by locals only as house number 9. They don't speak of it loudly, especially after dark, not because of what happened inside, but because of what kept trying to get in. This is the story of Rina, 6 months pregnant, glowing, happy, new to the area. She moved in with her husband Jomar after he inherited the house from his late aunt. The house was small, quiet with cracked Capiz windows and a narrow floor that creaked when you breathed too hard. Everything seemed normal, until the first night she heard the ticking. Not a clock, but something sharp, rhythmic, tapping against the roof like nails or claws or a tongue clicking in impatience. It happened again the next night, and again the night after that, always around 2 a.m., always followed by the faintest sound of wings flapping gently, as if something enormous floated above the trees. Jomar told her it was just a bat or a tickling, but Rina started waking with scratches on her belly, tiny, almost invisible lines across her skin that stung when touched. The midwife told her it was nothing, maybe her own nails, maybe her dreams, but Rina knew she wasn't scratching herself. She kept her nails short. She slept still and deep, and she never remembered dreaming. Then came the whisper. One night while lying in bed, she heard it through the bamboo slats in the wall. A voice so soft, so dry, it barely had weight. "I can smell the child inside you," she screamed. Jomar rushed in, checked the windows, checked outside. Nothing, just the wind and the trees. But Rina swore she saw something crouched on the roof when the lightning flashed. A silhouette, long, thin, legs bent backward, head tilting unnaturally too long, arms reaching down to the window. They called an albulario. He came the next day with salt, garlic, blessed oil, and a bottle of black vinegar. He placed old coins under the crib, burned dried leaves, and whispered words no one else understood. He then turned to Rina, placed a hand on her belly, and said, "You are being watched. Not because of who you are, but because of what you carry. There is hunger waiting nearby, an old hunger, one that cannot be satisfied with meat or blood, only with the breath of a child not yet born." That night they followed his instructions, covered the windows with woven thorns, placed sharp objects under the bed, and waited. The house held its breath, so did Rina. At exactly 2 a.m., the wind stopped. The air pressed heavy against the walls and the roof groaned, as if something had landed above it. Then a slow scratching started. Not fast, not violent, just a single claw dragging across the wood like someone writing a name. Then came the sound of bones popping, something crawling sideways across the roof and a tongue slithering between the cracks. Then silence, then the voice again, closer, louder, wet and broken. "Open the window, I'm cold. I want to see the child." Rina gripped her stomach, salt in one hand, oil in the other. The windows began to shake, the door rattled, hinges bent, and something began to whisper. From every wall, every crack, every nail, "Let me see, let me see, let me see." Suddenly the air split with a scream. Not human, not animal, something deeper, a sound that made the windows bleed and the roof smoke. And then it was gone. Morning came. Jomar found deep gouges in the roof, claw marks, burnt feathers, and something that looked like a long tongue melted to the window screen. The albulario returned, this time with a grave warning. "The Aswang was old and clever and angry. It will return not for you, but for the child on his 7th night after birth. Keep him hidden, keep him blessed. Do not let him sleep alone, not even for a moment." Rina gave birth weeks later, healthy, strong, but she never stayed another night in house number 9. They moved back to the city and never returned. The house still stands, crooked, leaning roof shattered, but the neighbors say that sometimes when a pregnant woman passes near it, the wind changes. The windows fog up and the walls breathe like something inside is still waiting for the child that got away. The skin on the clothesline. In the quiet coastal town of Antique, people still whisper about the woman who lived near the mangroves alone, quiet, never aging. Her name was Alingrudis, and her house stood at the very end of the street near the sea where the fog never lifted, and the air always smelled like something rotting just beneath the sand. They said she was kind, but strange, her voice low, her eyes heavy, like she hadn't blinked in years. She always wore long sleeves and a shawl, even in the heat of April, and the only time she smiled was during storms when the wind howled and no one dared go out. She raised no children, had no relatives, yet every full moon the dogs howled outside her gate and birds crashed against her windows. And sometimes, when the wind was just right, people swore they heard laughter that didn't sound like it came from a human mouth. One night, a boy named Lando snuck out to follow his cousin, who claimed he saw something hanging from her clothesline, something large and pale and dripping. Not clothes, not blankets, but something like skin stretched and flapping in the breeze. Lando hid in the bush, held his breath as the moonlight revealed it clearly, a full body's outer skin hanging hollow like a suit, the arms swaying gently in the wind, the mouth open as if screaming in silence. Then he saw her, Ruda's stepping barefoot out of the house, her body thin, twisted, sharp knees bending backward, spine arched, eyes glowing red, her mouth stretching too wide, splitting past the cheek as she crouched on the ground and with a wet sound unfolded massive leathery wings from under her shawl. Her fingers became talons, her feet cracked sideways and she rose slowly without noise, vanishing into the sky. Lando ran, told his family, told the barangay, but no one believed him. Not until the next morning when the midwife was found dead in her hut, her stomach torn open, her unborn child gone, and a trail of salt scattered uselessly around her bed. After that, the town grew silent. People avoided Aling Rudas. They crossed themselves when she walked past. They hung garlic on their doors, covered mirrors during full moons, and never left their newborns alone at night. One brave man tried to confront her, placed sharp bamboo around her home, brought a priest to bless the land, but the next day he was gone. His house burned, and all that remained was a piece of old skin nailed to the door with his name carved into it. Then one day, she vanished. No one saw her leave, no one saw her die, her house abandoned, her garden overgrown, and the clothesline still standing, swaying in the breeze, holding nothing but wind. But even now, during the hot season, when the moon is full and red, some fishermen say they see something flying over the sea, something with long arms and torn wings dragging its shadow across the water. And sometimes in the morning, villagers find dead birds without eyes and the trail of salt outside a door swept into the shape of a smile. And when they pass her old house, the air turns cold, the leaves stop rustling, and the wind carries a voice whispering, "Ang balat ay naiwan, babalik ako sa gabi ng dugo." They say the skin of an aswang is never truly dead, just waiting, hanging patient like a robe, ready to be worn again when the hunger returns. The heart inside the tree. There's a barangay at the edge of the mountains in Bicol where trees grow too close together and birds never sing, and the wind sounds like it's trying to speak, but always stops mid-sentence. They say it used to be peaceful until the Aswang chose to plant something there, something alive, something hungry. The villagers don't go near the oldest balete tree, not since the night a child disappeared during a fiesta and was never found. Only his shirt was discovered hanging from the lowest branch, soaked in something too dark to be just blood. They say the tree was not always cursed, but something was buried under it a long time ago. A woman named Iska, who was stoned by the townsfolk for being strange, her eyes too bright, her voice too calm, her skin too pale, her stomach round with a child no one claimed. When she died, she laughed, not cried, and said she would return and eat the bloodline of everyone who cast her out. Years passed, the land healed, the children played near the tree again, until a boy named Iggy fell ill. Always cold, always whispering things he shouldn't know. He said the tree talks to him, said a woman inside calls him by name, said she sings to him at night. His parents thought it was fever dreams, but the priest felt something else in the house. The smell of iron, the chill of something old, something not human. He touched Iggy's forehead and said a prayer, but his hand came away sticky like it had touched sap that pulsed. That night the neighbors saw someone walking into the woods, barefoot and slow. They followed the prince to the balete tree, and there was Iggy, standing still, staring up at the branches where something was swaying. A figure pale and long with eyes like coals and a mouth that opened too wide, filled with teeth too thin and too many. It leaned down from the tree like it was growing from it and whispered, "The boy is mine. I fed this land, and now it feeds me back." They pulled him away, but he was never the same, always silent, always watching the tree from a distance. And the villagers began to hear things too. The tapping at windows, the scratching under floors, the sound of wings brushing rooftops. One day, a farmer tried to cut down the tree, brought his axe, prayed first, swung hard, but the blade hit something. Not wood, something soft, something that bled. And when he pulled the axe back, it dripped red, and the tree groaned like something inside had just been wounded. He ran, told everyone, and the albulario came. He circled the tree, scattered salt, burned dried herbs, and said it was no longer a tree, but a body of vessel, planted to root the hunger of an Aswang, who had turned her soul into bark and branches, who now waits for children to wander too close, for women to give birth under a weak moon, for men to forget to pray before walking home. They fenced it off, but fences rot faster there. The nails rust overnight and dogs refuse to go near, and even birds change direction in the air. Sometimes at dusk, people hear crying from inside the trunk, or see small hands reaching out between cracks, or smell something sweet, like ripe fruit mixed with blood and sap. They say the Aswang inside does not fly, she does not crawl, she waits, and she remembers every name, every scream, every bloodline that once cast her out, and she grows stronger. With every heartbeat she hears near her roots. The midnight visitor, with no feet. In a quiet barangay in southern Leyte, there was a girl named Elma, known for her soft voice and the unborn child she carried with joy and fear. She lived in a nipa house, built on stilts near the edge of the rice fields, where the frogs croaked loud and the wind sometimes stopped completely without warning. Elma's husband worked night shifts in the next town, leaving her alone from sundown until sunrise. And though the house was lit with candles and the windows sealed with garlic and salt, she always felt like something was watching. At first it was the knocking, not on the door but on the roof. Soft tapping, slow as if something was walking upside down. Each step too careful, too long between, like it was listening for breath. She asked her neighbors. They said it was just a tuco or a bat, but her grandmother gave her a serious look and said, "Anak, kung may naririnig ka sa bubong huwag mong pansinin at huwag kang lalabas kahit anong mangyari." Elma followed her advice until the knocking turned into scratching, long dragging sounds like claws raking the bamboo, then the sound of something dripping, something thick hitting the floorboards, one drop at a time. On the seventh night, she couldn't take it anymore. She peeked out through the vent and saw a figure standing in the rice field facing her house, tall with long hair covering its face, arms too thin, its body swaying side to side as if dancing without music. She looked down and saw nothing touching the ground. No feet. The air went cold. The dog stopped barking and the scratching above her head turned into whispers, not words, but sounds like teeth clicking in hunger. She ran to her altar, lit every candle, poured oil around her belly and covered her ears. The night passed slowly, and when the sun rose, there were black feathers on the floor and small handprints on the walls where no one could reach. She told the albulario he came with ash and prayers, said an Aswang had marked her house, that it would come again and again unless a ritual was done before the baby's first heartbeat turned into a cry. He hung a stingray tail at the entrance, burned banaba leaves and placed a blade under her bed and told her, "Kung bumalik siya, huwag kang matako, pero huwag mong tignan ang mukha niya kailanman." The next night the knocking came again, but louder, faster, like something was pacing in anger. The roof creaked and the windows shook, and Elma stayed still, praying. Eyes shut, breath held. But the candle beside her flickered and died. The room turned black, and from the ceiling something dropped slowly, long fingers hanging first, then a head, turning upside down, then eyes glowing red, staring directly into hers. She screamed, covered her stomach, but the blade under the bed began to hum. Then the creature hissed and pulled itself back up the roof, trembling with every movement, and a sound like wings tearing filled the air. The neighbors came running, found her faint and cold, but alive, and above her house, carved into the roof, was a word no one dared say out loud. That night she was taken to another town, hidden until the baby was born, and only then did the attacks stop. But the old house remains empty, and when it rains at night, the locals say they still hear the tapping on the roof and see a shadow with no feet watching from the fields. And those who ignore it sometimes disappear and return only as a whisper carried by the wind saying, Gutompa ako, the woman beneath the floor. In a forgotten barangay tucked deep in the forests of Mindoro stood a wooden house, older than most trees around it, passed down through 5 generations. Untouched by time, untouched by outsiders, no electricity, no paint, only the creak of the floorboards and the heavy air that never seemed to leave. There lived a man named Dario and his mother Adora, who rarely spoke to anyone, rarely went to town, rarely allowed visitors inside the house. Some said it was grief, others said it was secrecy, but everyone knew something about that house was wrong. Strange things happened every night. The dogs in the area refused to bark when passing the property. Chickens refused to lay eggs. Birds never landed on the roof. Even the trees leaned away from it. And children were told never to knock on the door, especially after sunset. Then came Mira, a midwife from the next barangay, called by Dario's mother one early morning saying someone was sick, someone needed help, someone upstairs. But when Mira entered, she felt it, the kind of silence that pressed against your chest, the kind of silence that moved with you, the kind that listened. She climbed the narrow stairs and saw no patient, no bed, only a locked door at the end of the hallway, and Adora, who said, "Don't go inside, just leave the herbs at the door." Mira asked who was sick. Adora said, "My daughter." Mira paused because she had always heard that Adora only had one child and it was Dario, but she obeyed, left the herbs and went home. But something stayed with her, the way the floor groaned, even when no one moved, the faint sound of breathing under the boards, the smell of rust and sour fruit in the air. That night Mira couldn't sleep. She dreamed of claws tapping against the bamboo, of a voice beneath her pillow, whispering, "She's hungry." She returned the next day, this time without telling anyone. She approached quietly and from the side of the house, heard the faintest sound from beneath the floor, not from above, but below, a low sound, like chewing, like bones cracking one at a time. She peeked under the bahay kubo and saw a shape curled beneath the house. Long hair crawling across the soil, pale skin stretched too thin, a mouth moving slowly over something small, something that might have once been a bird or a rat or something else entirely. Then the shape turned and looked at her with eyes that were all black, all knowing, and she ran. When the barangay captain arrived later with men, they found Dario sitting calmly on the porch, holding a bowl of something dark and thick, his eyes empty, his mouth smiling, and inside the house they found the locked room open, a bed untouched for years, and a trail of blood that led down through a hole in the floor where no one was supposed to live. Adora was gone, no body, no bones, no scream, only a warning scratched into the wall above the door. Huwag ninyong pakialaman ang gutom ng hindi na tao. Since then, no one lives in that house. No one even walks near it. And when people pass by, they claim they hear movement beneath their feet, as if something below the soil still stirs and waits and breathes and hungers. Because sometimes the Aswang doesn't fly, doesn't knock, doesn't hiss. She just waits beneath the floor, waiting for footsteps, waiting for weakness, waiting for the next bowl to be filled. The sound on the roof. In a remote village in Iloilo, where the nights are darker than usual and the wind carries old prayers through the trees, there lived a woman named Lena. 7 months pregnant, quiet, kind, loved by her neighbors, known for singing to her unborn child every sunset, soft lullabies that floated through the air like smoke from a fire that had never gone out. Her husband Paolo worked far in the city, came home only once a month, leaving Lena alone with her belly growing and her voice growing softer as the days went by. The older women warned her never to go outside after sundown, never to hum after midnight, never to leave her windows open, even if it got too hot. She listened most nights, but one evening while singing, she forgot the time, and her last note ended just as the town bell rang 12. And in that moment, the wind stopped, the trees held their breath, and she heard something that wasn't part of her song. A creaking sound above her roof, slow, gentle, like a step, then another step, then something dragging, sharp and careful, then silence. She froze, held her belly, backed into a corner of the room, and whispered a prayer. Her voice barely leaving her mouth, then a click, like nails tapping against wood, something crawling across her ceiling, pausing above her like it was listening, waiting, hungry. She didn't sleep that night, and when the sun rose, she found scratches near the window, long, deep marks like claws dragging across the bamboo. and a faint scent in the air, like something dead, but still warm. The next day, she visited the local albulario, who gave her a pouch of herbs, told her to keep sharp metal under her bed, hang garlic by the window, mix salt with ash and scatter it on the roof, and most of all, never sing again after dark. She followed everything except the last. Her songs were all she had left when the night got too quiet. She sang, not to be heard, but to feel less alone. On the fourth night, she heard it again. The footsteps, soft, careful, heavier this time, closer, something breathing through the ceiling, wood creaking with the weight of something that shouldn't be walking. Then a knock, soft, slow, 1, 2, 3. Then silence. She didn't move, didn't breathe, but the knock came again, this time louder, and behind it a voice, low, dry, almost a whisper. Let me see the child. The garlic burned to ash, the salt scattered, the knife under her bed turned cold, and the air around her froze, thick, heavy, her breath no longer her own. The doors shook, the roof groaned, and from the window a shadow passed like wings without sound, and something pressed against the door. Not trying to break it down, just letting her know it could. When dawn came, everything was still, but outside her door she found feathers, black and wet, and beside them a string of teeth, small, not human, not animal, sharp and filed, smooth like a necklace, left behind as a promise. The barangay held a blessing. The priest stayed for 3 days. No one spoke of what they saw that week, but everyone kept their windows shut, and no one sang again for many nights. Lena gave birth safely and moved far away, never returned to the village. But those who live there say they still hear soft humming on stormy nights, followed by something crawling across the roofs, stopping above the houses where someone dares to sing after dark. And if you hear 3 knocks on your roof, do not look up, do not move, do not even pray. Just wait in silence and never answer. Because if the Aswang hears your voice, she will never forget the sound of your blood. The eyes behind the window. There is a small barangay in the mountains of Samar where people speak softly after sunset, where dogs hide under the stairs, and the old folks keep their windows nailed shut, not because of thieves or storms, but because of what once stood outside, watching, waiting, breathing. This is where the story of Rosa begins. Young, newly pregnant, married to a man named Emil, who worked late shifts in the town's rice mill, leaving Rosa alone most nights in their small bamboo hut beside the forest line. She was used to the quiet, used to the sound of geckos and leaves brushing the walls. But one night, something changed. It started with the knocking, not loud, not urgent, just a soft tap on the window near her bed, like a knuckle covered in skin too loose, then silence. She sat up, held her breath, the lamp flickered, and the air turned sour like spoiled milk mixed with blood. She didn't look out the window. She remembered what her Lola once said. Pag may kumatok sa gabi, lalo na kung buntis ka. Huwag mong sasagutin. Huwag kang titingin kahit ano ang mangyari. She stayed in bed, eyes wide. The knocking didn't return, but she felt it, the weight in the air. Something was still there waiting. The next morning, there were smudges on the glass, not fingerprints, more like marks from a tongue dragged across slowly in circles, like someone or something had been tasting the window. She told her neighbor. The neighbor told the barangay captain. The captain told the albulario, who came with salt, sharp thorns, ashes, and oil. And after a few minutes inside, he came out, pale and quiet, and simply said, May gutom sa paligid na hindi kayang pakainin ng pagkain lang. He placed a blade under Rosa's bed, tied a red thread around her wrist, scattered crushed garlic under every door, and warned Emil, Walang bubuksan na bintana, wala dapat iwan ang pinto, kahit saglit, kahit mainit, kahit may naririnig. The days passed quietly, but the nights grew heavier. And then it came again, not knocking this time, but breathing outside the window. Slow, rasping, wet, like lungs full of mud, followed by a voice, soft, broken female. Ang bongo ng laman sa tiyan mo akin na yan, Rosa screamed. Emil wasn't home. She ran to the altar, clutching her stomach. The blade under the bed began to vibrate, and the red thread on her wrist tightened like it was fighting something for her. Outside, something scratched the walls, not with claws, but with fingers. Long, thin nails, clicking gently, like someone playing with wood, and the breathing turned into laughter, then into silence. When Emil returned, they found the window open, even though it had been nailed shut. The salt was black, the garlic melted, the blade split in two like something bit it in half. The albulario returned, with more salt, more fire, more warnings, but this time he added one more thing. Hindi ito karaniwang, aswang matanda na ito, marunong pumili ng bata, marunong maghintay ng panahon. Rosa gave birth 2 weeks early, the baby weak, but alive. They left that night, left everything behind, and never came back. But the house still stands, empty, quiet, windows, cracked doors, swollen shut with moisture. But the neighbors swear, sometimes at midnight they see something standing inside, staring out from behind the same window. Tall, thin, eyes glowing red, with no face, just hunger, and the sound of slow, deep breathing in the dark. If you enjoyed this terrifying story, let us know in the comments below. Hit that like button to help us bring more cursed tales and dark legends to life. Don't forget to share this video with your friends, but warn them first. And if you dare, subscribe to this channel, because here in Pinoy Phobia, the horror never ends. Turn on the notification bell, so you never miss the next cursed story, spine-chilling folklore, or true paranormal encounter from the shadows of the Philippines. Remember, some stories are meant to be heard, but others are meant to be warnings. Thank you for watching, and remember, whatever happens, don't look back.